Hi. Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, a film programmer and cultural critic in Toronto, and this is The Other Thing I Do. My guest this week is Naomi Jaye, a writer and director whose first film, The Pin, was a Holocaust love story shot entirely in Yiddish. Her new film, Darkest Miriam, is an adaptation of Martha Bailey's novel The Incident Report, starring Severance's Britt Lauer as a Toronto librarian who becomes convinced someone is trying to send her distressing messages through the mundane language of institutional feedback. It kicked off the Canadian Film Fest earlier this week, and it opens in Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, and Sudbury this Friday, March 28th, with other Canadian cities to follow. It's really good, and you should see it. Naomi picked Three Colors Red, the culmination of Krzysztof Kieślowski's meditation on the French flag and its themes of liberté, égalité, and fraternité. The story of a young model in Geneva whose chance meeting with a retired judge sends both their lives in unexpected new directions. It's the third in the director's Three Colors trilogy, which began with blue and continued with white and ends here with remarkable performances from Irene Jacob and Jean-Louis Trintignant as Valentine and Kern, and an elegantly structured narrative that celebrates the randomness of ordinary life, even as it lays out Kieślowski's ultimate statement about connection and compassion. I can see why Naomi would respond to that. This is Someone Else's Movie.
It's just a film that I love, and I think it's a film that represents a lot of firsts for me. So I came to filmmaking a little bit late. I teach at TMU now, so I have students who are like 17 and want to be filmmakers. I did not know I wanted to be a filmmaker. So when I was 25, I was like, I think I want to make films, and then kind of started on that journey. But it was later than a lot of people get into it. And I don't know how old I was when I saw Red, but it was a film that spoke to me in so many ways. It was so, and not having been to film school and not understanding kind of the craft and art of filmmaking, it wasn't like an intellectual process at all.
Okay.
It was just like, when you see a film and then afterwards you just don't move, you're just stuck in your seat in the cinema.
The best feeling. I love that so much.
That was what this was. I was just like, I didn't know you could tell stories like this. I didn't know that I could feel so connected. This is going to sound over the top, but so connected spiritually to a film. And then I just became obsessed with him and I watched everything. And then when I at the time, it was really hard to get your hands on films. Like I could not find the Decalogue, and I was obsessed with finding the Decalogue. And then I finally somehow got my hands on it. And I was like, oh my God, this guy is I just want to crawl inside his brain and understand how he works and how he writes and how he chooses the images, and are all of the images in the script? Because a lot of the time it feels like you're watching something very mundane, but it's so important to the film, and it's so telling, but in such a kind of, I don't know, subconscious, it works so subconsciously. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a little bit older, and I was around for the emergence, I guess, of Kieślowski. The Decalogue had happened. I never got the chance to see it in the theater, but I was aware of it when it screened.
Right.
And I think I ended up seeing it on transcoded British DVDs when they finally came out from Suspect. Might have even been VHS tapes.
I'm pretty sure I saw it on VHS, and I don't remember the name of the video store, but it was on Danforth. I was living on Danforth at the time.
Oh, it was probably Review Video.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Because they did the same thing. They specialized in bringing things over that weren't supposed to be here.
Yeah.
And I got to see, I think the first film of his I saw in a theater must have been Double Life of Veronique.
Yeah.
It would have been 91 or so, because I was already working by then. I was covering film. And when the trilogy came along, the audacity of it, the idea that he'd made 3 feature films within the span of, 18 months really, but in the space of a year, they were, I think Blue and Red both played Ken, right? And White
I think
was
so.
in there in the middle. And the thrill of seeing these movies and the way they really don't communicate with one another until they finally do. Mm-hmm. And the tonal shifts. M.H. Murray talked about Blue as this immersive exploration of grief and loneliness, and White is the broader comedy. kind of a comedy of errors, I
It's
suppose, or a
dark, but
comedy of
yeah,
manners. But yeah,
yeah,
it goes to some extremely dark places, but it's still lighter
yeah,
tonally, just by virtue of, I think, the situation and the setting. And then Red comes along and is once again completely different. But it was so exciting to sit down for the press screening and have no idea where this was going to go and how we were going to
yeah,
get there.
yeah. I remember the thing that sticks out with, I mean, the trilogy is brilliant and I love all of them, but Red really, there's something about Red that I really, and maybe it's the romantic in me, but I really, really, it just spoke to me. But I remember from Blue, the image that sticks out the strongest from Blue is when she's eating a lollipop. Do you remember she's
Yeah.
in a room and there's a chandelier that's casting blue onto the walls and she's crunching this lollipop. And that's what I find so extraordinary about him. It's like, is that, I'm like, is that in the script? Is that scripted that she's going to eat a lollipop? Or in Red, when she's at the ballet class near the beginning and she's drinking that water, like voraciously drinking that water. I'm like, why am I watching this? But it's exactly what I should be watching right now at this precise time in this film. He's so in control of the images, and the images are feeling so tangential to what this is about, but there always is a very strong, it feels to me like kind of emotional, spiritual reason why you're seeing what you're seeing. And it's just masterful. I'm just enthralled by him. I really am. Yeah.
The connection I always make is that he wants us to watch the characters even when nothing is happening. Like
Yeah.
there's something that he does. A few other directors do it habitually. I always think about, the way that Darden will just start with characters in motion and wait for us to figure out who they are,
Yeah.
or how Soderbergh is this sort of clinician of behavior where he'll find something and just drill into it to the exclusion of whatever else is going on in the movie at the moment. He just wants to watch this activity.
Yeah.
Kieslowski, I think, his fascination with people when they don't think they're being watched,
Mm.
characters who just exist quietly in a moment. I mean, that's the entirety of Binoche's performance, right? Because she's so closed off in Blue to anyone else
Yeah. Yeah.
that she's unself-aware to a remarkable point. And then you contrast it with what Irene Jacob is doing, where she's a model. She's used to being looked at. She exists to be like her living is made by being seen, but she'll still stop and just do things that aren't necessarily immediately understandable.
Yeah.
And again, it's up to us to look closer to sort of penetrate the veil of these characters and whatever armor they've caught up with. I mean, I think about Carl in White, who is
Yeah.
just the sad sack idiot on the outside, but the more time you spend with him, the more you see the despair. And I think there's something else to knowing he has this much time to work with, that he's making three features that are roughly connected or very
Yes.
loosely connected. He's got the audience's buy-in by that point. If you come in knowing that this is one of three things, even if all you know is the title, there is a sense that, blue's obviously not the only color. What are the other two colors? Where's this going to go? If you walked in blind. But those of us who knew what was going on by Red are just so keyed up to look for things and study things more closely. And going back to the movies subsequently, all three of them are just alive with detail.
The way that maybe it's because I didn't go to film school, or maybe it's because of just who I am, but I don't ever, not, that's a big one to say, don't ever, but it's very rare that I will pick apart a film, um, and I'm not someone who's always like looking for the clues and the this and that, how are I'm just reacting to what I see. It's a very kind of visceral, emotional experience for me. And I think that's what I respond to so strongly in his films, that it feels like he is a master puppeteer at showing me what I need to see when I need to see it. I feel like I'm being guided through the film beautifully, and I'm in good hands, if you know what I mean, to see a story. And there's something about the way that he views the world and the way that I believe, of course, I don't know him, I never knew him, but the way that he understands the world and the way that that he connect the way, people are always trying to make connection and trying to understand their lives in terms of story. We're meaning makers and we're always trying to see like how does this thing that happened to me now affect this thing, and like why did these two things happen at the same time? And some people can be very superstitious about it and some people can be very pragmatic about it. But there's something spiritual in his films that happens for me, that it feels like the way that she ran over the dog and then went to is his name? I can't remember the character name, but Jean-Louis Trintignant's house, and and the way that she overheard the conversation, and the way that the student drops the book on the ground, and then is happens to be the page that he's going to be asked at an exam, that question that he happened to read because the book fell. And then you find out the same thing happened to Jean-Louis Trintignant's character. It's just like these connections that are made that are so delicate and tenuous, but it really does feel like something greater is going on here. Something kind of mystical and magic is happening in such a beautiful way. And that's how I interpret the world and all of these events that happen. And to bring it a little bit around to Darkest Miriam, I think it's the same thing that you see. And even the way the book is constructed, you see that these tiny little moments in someone's life are actually someone's life. And when you join them together, you see that something momentous is happening, something beautiful and big and um and affirming and is happening. And that's the kind of film that I love, where it's not a direct line. The narrative is not clean and simple, and it's not like you go from A and then you hit B. It's something a lot more complex than that is happening visually, like in the visual language. And that's what I wonder about with him. I'm like, how much of this is script and how much of this is not in the script? Because it's so brilliant. Have you ever seen one of his scripts? Like real scripts, not script extracted from film?
No, no, I never
Oh,
did.
I'd love to.
I think they were, I'm pretty sure at least Veronique was published because it was one of those art house hits that had people
I have it. I
rushing
have
to
it.
pick
But
it
then
apart.
I always wonder, is it extracted from the final film or is it really the script?
Oh, like the post
Do you
facto
know what I
thing they
mean?
do. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
what I,
don't, that's a good question. I don't know.
yeah.
I would assume, yeah, I don't want to assume. I know the old and like the people who really broke the concept were or ruined the concept were whoever published Woody Allen's script and always stuck to the finished film
The
because
film.
you're just
Yeah.
not given all we know about how radically he recuts things and reshoots things
Yeah.
or did at the time. It just seemed ridiculous that we never got the original script for say Anhedonia or Manhattan, so we could
Yeah.
see, because I'd be fascinated to see the extra stuff and the deviations
Yeah.
and the shaping. But yeah, it feels to me like Kieslowski was obsessive on that level, that he would have,
Mm.
I mean, just based on the Decalogue, you have to plan something that complicated in advance for TV because it's such a quick shoot, right? He didn't have a lot of
Yeah.
money or a lot of time. Veronique is, the visual sensibility is so essential to it. Blue, the way the score comes in and
Mm.
works. I mean, all of this stuff has to be in his head before he starts.
Yeah.
I don't know what you, I mean, I don't even know what in, say, in Red that you would find on the day, right? Maybe some little tiny bits of performance, but it feels like the obsessiveness with which he creates the images and the mise en scène. It's like, it's a Haneke level attention to detail
Yeah.
where this all has to happen exactly this way or the movie doesn't work.
Yes. No, I agree with that. I guess you're right, kind of thinking about it from that perspective. Yes, it would all have to be, but it doesn't feel like that, does it? And that's what's so
No, not
great
in a
about it, is
moment.
it doesn't feel planned at all. It just feels like things are unraveling in a way that life unravels. And of course it's completely controlled fiction, but it does to me feel like how life just unravels. Um, gosh. And I'd never seen, because I guess because I mean I liked watching films, but because I wasn't like there, it was not in my early plans to be a filmmaker. So I didn't, I mean I watched films and I did like art house films, but it wasn't like I was obsessively watching films and dissecting them and really understanding. And when I saw the beginning of that film where he goes under the channel, through a phone wire, I was like, oh my God, I've never seen anything like this before. Like things that he was doing, the way he was connecting their two lives, the obsessive use of red. I was like, wow, I just had not seen anything that felt so um, kind of both deliberate and both organic at the same time. And Jean-Louis Trintignant, who I wrote a letter to have him be the old man in the pin,
Oh
if you
yeah.
remember. Yeah, we just discovered it. Yeah, you just brought up that we actually have met a long time ago. Because I think he's just extraordinary. And that's the first film that I saw him in. I didn't know him from his other work. So that was also a first, seeing him, and he's so good. They're both so good, but he is so good. When he tilts that kettle, I just rewatched it because I knew we were talking about it. When he tilts the kettle when it spills and then he deliberately pours it, that's what I mean. Is that in the script? Maybe.
I would guess the incident is, but maybe not the way, not the gesture, not the
Yeah.
manner in which it's played out. Because I can't imagine Trintignant would be receptive to direction at that stage in his life. Like he's going to do things the way he wants to do them. But there's a naturalism to the way everything plays out, even though this
Yeah.
film is stylized and almost obsessively structured to deliver that impact. Um, I think that's what it is that you responded to, the sense that it is just not random exactly, but it's hard to explain without sounding ridiculous. But I think the thing that Kieslowski specialized in, that really no one else, Haneke came close once or twice. But they're such completely different filmmakers. Like Haneke
Yeah.
doesn't like people, and I think that
Yeah.
Kieslowski deeply,
He
deeply
really
loves
likes
all of
people.
his
Yeah.
characters. Um, but I do think they have an overlap in the way they depict coincidence and connection,
Yes,
and
I agree with that.
right, and how they function organically in retrospect.
Yeah.
Haneke's films are always telling you where the connections are going to lead, or that these things are going to interlace or interact. I just won't tell you how just yet, or someone knows something about this person.
Mm.
Kieślowski just invites us to see those connections without underlining them or insisting on them, to the point where Veronique plays with the idea that there are two versions of this person,
Yeah.
and almost teases us with the possibility that there might not be for the longest time. That might be just one person that we're watching somehow, until you figure out what is going on, which is even more interesting. But the way that the pieces of the Decalogue interact or don't, depending on which ones we're talking about, the way that the characters here are always on the verge of connection, but never really do until the very, very last moment of the very last film, that feels much more casual and unstructured, even though, of course, it's rigidly structured and
Yeah.
all of these things are plotted out and written down. But while you're watching his movies, he can trick you into believing you're just glimpsing things, you're eavesdropping on real life, which I still don't fully understand how he did that. There is an ease to
Yeah.
everything that happens in
There
his
is an
films.
ease. I think what you said about him really loving people has a lot to do with it because he has so much compassion for his characters. Nothing feels um heavy-handed.
Mm,
There is a realness to what you're seeing, to the incidents that occur, to the connections that are made, to, like the fact that these two people live in this neighborhood together but never really meet, and I believe it. I actually believe it. I'm like, I believe this. I believe that these two people who are being connected obsessively with this camera have never met. And the way, like the visual language as well, that gum ad that she does, and then at the end, you're like struck with that final shot of her.
yeah,
Oh my God, like you just feel like there is meaning and control in the universe. And maybe that's what's so appealing, that it's like it feels like he's somehow in the place of God, and manipulating and controlling and making sure that people meet when they should meet and making sure that things happen when they should happen in order to, manipulate and MacGyver this final meeting of all the characters from all the films. It's just, but it's done with such love and such a light hand. It's a heavy hand, but it's a light feeling hand. Um, yeah, I guess that's what I respond to so deeply, that it just feels so real. What is complete artifice feels so real to me, and it feels so similar to how I experience life in the world, that it
And
ends up having this really kind of profound spiritual effect on you. Yeah.
yeah, well, and I think it also helps that Red of the three is the film that is most actively engaged with the idea of destiny and fate and
Yes.
whether or
Yeah.
not God is paying attention and likes us.
Yeah.
It's sort of it's represented in Kern, right? Who
Yeah.
is he's spying on his neighbors for no
Yeah.
particular reason.
Yeah.
And his opinions on his neighbors are held back. We never really know. We don't know why he's doing it, and we don't know what he gains from it, other than a
Yeah.
sense of superiority. We also know he's a judge, so he's just used to passing judgments. But it's like an organic extension of his responsibility. Even if he's no longer active as a judge, he still needs to do this. He needs to have opinions about things in people's lives, and having Valentine just refuse to accept that, um, and be annoyed at the idea that this man is creating morality for everyone else and arguing about destiny and destination. And I kept trying to figure out which one of them is representing Kieslowski's point of view, and then I realized it's both of them. Like this
It's
whole
both of them,
film,
I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's an argument about free will and destiny from someone who is controlling everything his characters do, but also is okay, you clearly, or rather, he clearly is giving them room to breathe on the page as he writes them. I feel this so fully in something else. Like, I mean, like Blind Chance, which is a refutation of everything in Red, except that he made it first, which means Red is the refutation of Blind Chance. But it's this argument he's wrestling with himself more than anything else in the whole over his entire career. Is it how much responsibility do we have to each other, but also how much control do we have over our own
Yeah.
choices? So is there such a thing as responsibility for someone else if you yourself have no responsibility for the choices you make? And
Yeah.
with Red, we argue that at length, or it's argued for us at length, in such a fascinating way, because it never feels like a didactic conversation. It doesn't feel like we're watching this to understand how Kieslowski feels. It's more about our decision to come down on one side or the other of it. I mean, he has his answer. Red concludes with this absolutely beautiful incidental acknowledgement of a higher power.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The reason those people survived is because we've been watching a movie about them. That is
Yeah.
as arbitrary as it gets,
Yeah.
from the inside in the world, because those people don't know that the movies are about them. They'll never know. This fictional universe exists for us to watch and consider. And in that way, we get to be God, which I think is just this extra piece of the Rubik's Cube that he's created for us to play with and be haunted by. But while you're watching it, you just care. You're invested in a way that, here we go, Kern isn't when he's watching people. Like, he's us as well as God, or at least Kieslowski makes it possible for us to assume any of these things or be in any of these positions. And again, never pushing the point. It's not important to the storytelling, but it's important to us watching the story, and only afterwards. I know
Yeah.
that was just a whole garble of concepts, but it is so fully busy with philosophies and aesthetic and, like a moral um, plea to the audience to care rather than
It,
just
yeah, it
scoff.
just functions, it functions on so many levels. Like it functions so powerfully, imagistically, without kind of getting into, philosophical debates over it just it and I think that's the way that I was experiencing it the first time that I saw it. It just landed on me like it was so beautiful and so I felt like there was something really momentous happening in that film, and I couldn't quite understand or grapple with it necessarily intellectually right away, but it just landed in this kind of visceral, emotional way. And, after watching the trilogy and you see Valentine, you see that woman recycling in all three films, and she's the only one that goes over and helps. She like helps this woman put her bottle in the recycling. It's just so, to me, I guess it just felt so hopeful and so beautiful. And the fact that the judge, um, he also has his experiences in the world and his sadnesses in the world, but ultimately, and that strange thing that he does at near the very end where he asks to see her ferry ticket, you know,
Yeah, as if confirming.
as if like he was gonna go buy the other guy his ticket or something. I'm like, did you want to see the seat he was in? Like, it's so like specific and detailed, and there's so much, um, yeah, like kind of caring and this, you have this feeling that this judge is somehow, he can access information that none of us can access in terms of being able to connect these two people who somehow need to be connected, that he ultimately is in charge of that he made this happen. The destiny of, this connection was his doing, which of course is impossible, but yeah, I think just the construction of it and the writing of it is so clever. I do wonder about that process. There are some people, like some creators, whose work I just find so clever, and Haneke is one of them. But Robert Lepage is another one, and more for his theater work than for his films. Although his films, I do like his films. You know, where after certain productions, I just am like, oh my God, I don't understand how you would even begin the process of creating these interwoven stories. I just don't understand it. Like it's so complex and yet so accessible is the wrong word. So engaging when you're watching it, and it doesn't feel like work when you're watching it. It just feels again like these images are landing on you in the right way at the right time. I'm like, how do you do that? I wish I could do 1/10 of what they do, It really is extraordinary.
Hey, it's Norm interrupting my own show to bring you up to speed on Shiny Things, my newsletter about physical media, culture, and the odd streaming project. Last week, I wrote about Wolfman, Werewolves, Y2K, Deep Blue Sea, and Godzilla vs. Biollante, and the 50th anniversary editions of Tommy and Night Moves from Shout Studios and Criterion. Sign up for a 14-day free trial at shiny-things.ghost.io or find a link at the Semcast Blue Sky account. You like reading about movies? I like writing about them. Come check it out. There is a reason that almost every interview I, I've done with people will start with some form of, how did you even know this would work?
Yeah.
Because the confidence to pull something off is one thing, but the skill and the talent, because the best artists I find are the ones who are most crippled by self-doubt and imposter syndrome, the ones who aren't sure they can do things. And countless people have told me that, until they have the right idea, they couldn't get started, full stop. They just weren't able to develop something until they knew they had the thing, the spark or the flame. And I don't know how you I don't know how you realize something like this, literally produce it to create it.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you do it and how you do it so effortlessly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a form of seduction, right? This story is supposed to distract us with all of the mundane things until we see the pattern or realize the structure and understand what he's really getting at. Because yeah, I mean, when it does come together, when we see the footage at the very end and realize this is where the whole thing was going the whole time, this whole project, I was in a screening room with maybe 30 people, and there was just this, it wasn't even a gasp, it was just this, it was a sound, it was a sigh of appreciation that, oh, that it was enlightenment or illumination. And to get us there without ever tipping his hand, without ever saying, oh, like, keep an eye on this. This is important. The thing with the ticket, right? Like, it's just one more touch. And if we're supposed to believe that Kern has been controlling these things, or at least is responsible to some extent for making these connections, then when did he decide to make these connections? I've watched the movie a number of times over the decades and I still don't know, but it's clear like he's not interested in Valentine in the beginning. And by the end of it, he's invested in her happiness and her, possibly even her life continuing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just played so subtly and naturalistically that at no point do you ever feel like something fantastical is happening, or something uh, the meta texture, the meta narrative is there certainly, but that's for our benefit. It's not for the characters, unless it is, in which case it's hidden so delicately. Are we supposed to believe that Julie in blue is enduring all of this because she'll come out the other side as a better person, or does she choose to come out the other side as a better person in the course of that film? And is that what makes her eligible to survive the events of Red?
Yeah.
I mean, I wish he teased it at one point. I don't even think he was taking it seriously, but he said he was going to make a movie about everybody on the boat. Or
Oh,
just,
really?
it's in an interview somewhere. I remember him saying it at some point, just saying, well, this is what I want to do. And it obviously never came to pass. And I don't know if it was even true. He might have just been messing with somebody.
Yeah.
But, I can also imagine that line being delivered sarcastically. Oh, I'm sure you'd want to watch a movie on the boat.
Yeah.
But I kind of do.
I don't know if I'd want to see it. I don't know if I'd want to see the boat. I think I have enough, having seen the inside of their lives, so for the amount of time that I saw, that there's something, and I think this is what I like about his films as well, and something that I strive for in my films. It's like about what you do show and what you don't show. And there's something nice about what he doesn't show us, and what we don't hear and what we don't see. And to see what happened on the boat, I don't think I would want to see it. I think I would rather, in my own way, imagine it, or not imagine it, and just know that there was this kind of plan, this destiny for all of these people to end up somehow surviving this tragedy, you know?
Yeah. Maybe it's just
Yeah.
the need to have the extra, the frisson, the extra sizzle of watching them like walk past each other and just not encounter each other for the entire 90 minutes of whatever that movie would be. And yeah, in that case, I can absolutely
Yeah,
see a
I guess. Yeah.
sarcastic version of that. It's like, oh no, look, they almost had the same croissant, but they didn't. But that's the bad version, right? Like there are so many versions of that movie in the
Yeah.
world, and I don't think we need it. I think that not fully understanding why they are connected, and perhaps they're not connected at all, except that they just happen to survive this one thing at the very end of the third
Yeah.
film.
Yeah.
And what if Kern wasn't even aware of them? Like, does he have any influence at all? Does he have any influence over anyone's life, really? Or is it just a pompous old man pretending he's still important?
Oh, I wouldn't want to think that. He doesn't come across. I have so much compassion for his character. There's something so, and I think that speaks to, I mean, the casting of it, and Jean-Louis Trintignant's performance is so, there's something about his face and the way that he is, and the way you can see that he has something really devastating has happened to him, and has placed him, in this house listening to other people's stories, and maybe, in a weird way, that is the connection to Darkest Miriam. It's these two people who are just listening to other people's stories instead of living their lives. And when Valentine comes in, she like that's what shakes him out, and that's what makes him engage again with the world, um, and confess his wrongdoings, and then be invested in her, and what her story will be. It's I have a lot of compassion for him, even though he's doing something pretty awful. Yeah, and the set as well, his room, his space, it's so beautiful, and it's so telling, and the sound of that, the when the receiver is trying to find the signal to the neighbors, and I think it's the same sound that they have playing in her car when she's looking for the radio station, when she hits the dog.
Mm.
It's such a great sound. There's something so analog as well, and obviously because of when it was made, the technology in it is so when she's, like looking for the radio station and tapping the radio, the old radio, there's something very nostalgic about it as well. Now, obviously,
Sure.
looking looking back. Yeah.
Yeah, it does feel well, and there's that old world Europe thing as well, right? Where
Mm,
people are still resisting advancements. I mean, it's 1994. The internet is around, but nobody really understands it.
yeah.
It's yeah, it's still. I mean, photography is beautifully analog.
Mm,
The sense of texture. The last time I watched it was in the new 4K releases from Criterion, and it looks like film again for the first time in 30 years, and it's just
yeah.
beautiful seeing something in that resolution so that was shot on film. It just it looks. I mean, it probably looks better than it did when I saw it projected in the crappy little famous player screening room where the Alliance had all their press screenings. Um, Certainly, the sound was more consistent, but there's also just I don't know if it's deliberate. It's in all of his films too. He wasn't a glossy filmmaker. The Three Colors
Mm,
films are the ones where he really embraced a certain kind of commercial looking cinema in blue and red, not so much in white. But it also places us, I think it tells us these characters have money and they're a little more comfortable. There is a sense of affluence
yeah.
creeping in, but I think he uses it as a criticism as well. He uses the gloss to make us pay attention to the surfaces and see that things might be lacquered and shiny and polished and new, but the people using them are still bound by the same basic desires that run through all of Kieslowski's work. They run, there's jealousy, there's envy, there's questions of status and insecurity, and there's loneliness. There's so much loneliness, and people
Yeah.
are doing what they can to avoid it, walling themselves off, convincing themselves they don't feel the need to connect to other people. I mean, if anything, that is what this trilogy is about, obviously. Um, Julie doesn't want new relationships, having lost everything. Carl only wants the relationship he no longer has, and the exclusion of everything else, all the potential in his life, and gets a version of the thing he wants, but ultimately hasn't earned, or it feels
Mm,
unearned. And then here we have characters who have no connection to one another until chance forces them to connect, and even then, it's reluctant. Like, they don't like each other at first. Valentine feels contempt for Kern. She pities him. He doesn't like her because he doesn't like anybody. And of course, there's Auguste, who's um, her schoolmate or classmate, I suppose, her neighbor. He's taking law courses, and Kern is a judge, so they should connect, but they don't quite, because that's not how either of them would like they wouldn't like each other if they met, or at least the sense is that they wouldn't like each other if they met. And the sourness of this film's like, blue is cold and hard, white is desperate and warm in the wrong, in a self-destructive way, and red, which should be the color of passion, right? I mean, it's the warmest of the three colors in the trilogy. It's supposed to be the color of love and passion and just high emotion. And all three of these characters resist that in different ways over and over again. They don't want to be like, they're drawn together by boredom and curiosity more than anything else. And then the connections start to knit themselves together in front of us.
Well, but Valentine and Auguste are both in. I mean, Auguste doesn't know it, but I guess it's a bad relationship because she cheats on him, right? And Valentine is in this relationship with this guy who's just like a real asshole, like, presumably married. I don't know if we ever find out that he's married.
I got the feeling, but yeah, I don't
But
know
I
that it's
got I got
ever.
the feeling he was married, and he's like deeply jealous and possessive, and so there is love in the story. There is connection, but it's just the wrong, like it's not what you would want. It's not healthy. It's not the ones that they should be in. It's not the good ones, if you know what I mean. And then ultimately, I mean, it's kind of left, yeah, but that's what I love as well, and why I don't think I would want to be on the boat, because you see in the end these two people who somehow you feel maybe, are destined for each other, actually will likely, well, I don't know. I feel like they will be together, because she went to visit her boyfriend in England, but that's not what's going to happen. That's not what was supposed to happen. That's not who she's supposed to be with. She's supposed to be with this other guy. But maybe that's not what happens at all. Maybe, I mean, and that's what's so great about it. Like, who knows? And that's the beauty of this film and of him as a filmmaker and of the films that I love. It's like the who knows. I don't want to be told everything. I don't need to know all the information. I would rather wonder and grapple and just be filled with the awe of the potential of it all than actually know, which kind of ruins films for me when you just know in the end what happens. And maybe because you don't know in life what's going to happen. You just don't know, right? And that's why it feels so true and real because you don't know. In a great way, you don't know. Oh, like Decalogue 1 um when the sun is missing at the end because the ice wasn't strong enough. Oh my God. And you don't know. And you're in the position of the parents of not knowing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like torture. Again, to contrast with Haneke, where, some
Yeah.
of his films are just mad at me for showing up,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
sometimes. He wants us to feel the ache of not knowing and the
Yeah.
despair, not the haha, look, you'll never have an answer. It's it's
Yeah.
it's not callous, it's not cruel. It's somehow compassionate to
I was
acknowledge that
that
there are things we never know.
that word was just I was about to say that word as well. There's a deep compassion in his films, like a deep compassion for humans and what it is to be human and the messiness of it and the not knowing of it all. But he presents these stories in such a beautiful way with so much. It feels like he really understood people. I wonder what he was really like with actors.
Yeah. Everyone spoke of having wonderful relationships with. I mean, I don't think Iran Jacob would have come back if
Yeah.
they hadn't had a
Yeah.
good relationship. But oh God, yeah, if you really want to ruin your day, go read the testimonials that came out after his death, because people just felt like their hearts had been ripped out of their chest. They wrote so beautifully of him,
Yeah.
critics and collaborators alike. It's just it's it's such an awful thing to see someone at the peak of their powers and realize there could have been decades more, right? There could have been so much more work. Um,
How old
that
was he when he died?
50 something, I want to say. He
Something
was
like that.
really early 50s. He was pretty young.
And he had another, was it I don't know if it was another trilogy about heaven and earth coming out.
He did, yeah. He was
And
planning
who
another
made it?
trilogy.
Someone made it. I watched it and it was not good. I was so upset.
Oh, just the one, right? Heaven, I
Yeah, who
think.
made it?
Tom Tykwer, I believe, directed
Oh,
that.
I
The guy who
didn't
made Run
like
Lola
it.
Run from the script, from the heavily readapted. Yeah, it's not very good. It's got some
No.
ideas that are interesting, but I think his specific touch is so unique that everything else feels lost in translation.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, he was 55 when he. Oh no, he wasn't even 55. He was 54 when he died.
Wow.
2 years after, just a little less than 2 years after the release of Red.
Wow. Isn't that sad?
Yeah, it
Like,
was. Oh,
and then his writing partner, did he go on? I should have poked a little bit more before we spoke, but did the writing partner go on to continue writing? Like, was he?
um, let me see. Um, I don't believe he did. I want to make sure I pronounce his name properly. Pishevitz, I guess. Christoph
Mhm.
Pishevitz. They worked on Decalogue. They worked on Noen. Veronique. I forgot he co-wrote Veronique. He has written one film that's been produced since called Silence,
Mm.
which was directed by Mikkel Rosa and released in 2002. And apparently that's it.
Okay.
Um, he was trying to rewrite Heaven,
Oh,
but ended
okay.
up not finishing it. And someone else picked it up and made it for the Tickwer film. No, I
Right.
don't. I knew him most. I knew he had been a lawyer before he became a screenwriter, but then he continued
I.
to practice law. Apparently,
Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
Was in the was in the Polish Senate from 2005 to 2009, and then didn't
Oh,
run for re-election in 2011, and apparently he's just quietly retired these days. Which I
wow.
mean, I guess he's earned it.
Yeah.
He's 79 now. Yeah, of course he would have retired. Yeah, what a strange position to be in. To
To lose your collaborator and then, yeah, I mean, and I also wonder about that. I wonder about what that collaboration was like because co-writing is a very specific thing. I've kind of poked at it a few times, but nothing has ever come of it.
hmm,
And in some ways, I think it can be such a beautiful thing to speak things out loud and to have someone working with you, and it can be really helpful. But by the same token, it's such a singular thing making a film, and I think for me, it's such a singular vision. I don't know how you would do that. Which is again why I'm very curious about process in general. Like how do people actually do it? How do they sit down and write and how do they make films? What do they actually do? What is the prep work like? What is coming on set? What is coming beforehand? And I wonder about that. I mean, to your point, it's so specific and so detailed. There would have to be I mean, any film, there's a tremendous amount of planning that goes on, obviously, because it's also so expensive. You have to know what you're going to do and shoot very quickly.
of course.
Um, But yeah, I guess when I feel what I would call genius, I just want access to process. Like how did you do this? I really want to know, you know?
Yeah, and they always say the same thing, which is just like, "Oh, it's the only way I can work," which is so frustrating because I understand people wanting to protect the process by not discussing it. You don't want to take it apart because you might not be able to put it back together again. But the yeah, the sparks, the
You know,
inspirations, how does that work
like
with a
as someone who teaches and who's very interested, like I teach at TMU, and I'm very interested in general by process. I'm not at all private about process because I think it's just, I don't have superstitions around it. Like if I tell someone my process, they're suddenly like, it's not going to work anymore. I think it's just really interesting to discover how people work and what comes first and how you write. And like literally when I was started writing, I was like, well, where do you sit? Or is it a pencil? Like I was so it was so foreign to me. I didn't understand how you could do it. It felt so daunting that I really wanted to understand the intricacies of what that meant, practically, logistically.
Mhm.
And I guess that's what I wonder about Kieslowski, because it feels so, I'll use an annoying word, organic, which of course it's not. What I mean, maybe the creation process, I mean, maybe the writing process is, and maybe there's something on set, some magic that's happening. But filmmaking, low budget filmmaking and high budget filmmaking, just to the same extent, I guess, it's not an intuitive, slow process. It's like a very structured, rigid process. But then how do you find these moments of beauty and truth and such specificity in performance that makes it feel so real and true? How do you allow for that on set when actually you just have to get your day,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know?
I mean, I was going to ask the I was going to pivot to Darkest Miriam this way because the question of collaboration, it's an adaptation. It's someone else's book that becomes your film. But how does that work when the novel is so structured and so specifically structured, and you can't do that? It's not possible to do that on film in the same way that you can on the page. So, at what point did you realize that you had to shift things and change the perspective, open things up, and play the story differently for the film? And is the author okay with that? I mean, is that even a concern while you're doing it? At what point does this thing become your own thing?
So the agreement that we had when I wrote to Martha and the publisher and said I want to make this, I said I was very honest about it. I hadn't made my first film, I hadn't made The Pinion, and I had never adapted anything. But thankfully they were up for it. So I didn't involve the author in the adaptation process at all. I just said I'm gonna make it. And there was no like, okay, but I would like to, be involved in some way, or it was just so she just handed it over and I adapted it. And that process was very long and hard. And I'll speak a little bit about that. But Martha was not involved in the writing of it at all. because I felt like it would be really difficult for her to see it differently, not as a book. And it would be really difficult for me to have her part of the process because I needed to just break open the book and make a film, if you know what I mean. So
Yeah, yeah.
she was very involved during the filming of. She was, on board and present and curious and acting as a kind of consultant. So she was, once we were up and moving, she was involved. But before then, she wasn't. Um, and then I think the first draft that I made, and the first drafts that I was working on, the hardest thing was to let go of the book. But when I finally did let go of the book, it was very nonlinear. It was really like moments. Like the other film that I was thinking of bringing forward, but didn't in the end because I just have such a love for Krzysztof Kieslowski, was Jem Cohen's Museum Hours,
Oh, yeah.
which I love. I think it's such a brilliant film. And it was the reference that I was giving people throughout this process because it did feel similar in structure to what this film is, which is a collection of moments that when you step back, you see that something really momentous is going on. Something has happened here, which is exactly how I experience life and what Krzysztof Kieslowski does in some ways for me. Like it's that feeling of a collection of events that make up a life, that make up someone's experience.
Sure.
Um, so if anything, the film started off incredibly nonlinear and had to become more linear in a nonlinear way in order to be mainstream adjacent or um, to get buy-in, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to look conventional, to appear
Yeah.
conventional, even though it isn't.
Yeah. Yeah. So the adaptation process was really the hardest part was letting go of the book. And then once I was able to do that, which took a super long time, and kind of create new pieces and new parts, then it was just trying to kind of understand what role the patrons would play, what role the library would play in this story of a woman who is, trying to escape from this kind of prison that she's made herself to live in, to protect herself.
I'm so glad it's getting in front of people now that people can see it. And now you have the additional attraction of having Britt Lauer in it at a point where Severance is even hotter now, I think, than it was first time around in 2022. But she's always been this fascinating, interesting, hard to read actor, which was used for comedy in Man Seeking Woman, and it's used for mostly drama, but also comedy in Severance. But the ache is something in Miriam's life. The ache in Lauer's performance is something that I recognize, weirdly enough, from Kieslowski. Because when you picked
Yeah.
Red, it made perfect sense to me.
Oh, I'm so glad. Okay. Yeah, I thought maybe it was a bit kind of out of the circle, but now talking about it, it's not out of the circle at all.
No.
I mean, I didn't know who she was. I didn't ask, can we please have Britt Lauer? I didn't know her. And then she was brought forward by the casting agents and they said just watch Severance. And in the first scene, in the first moments of the first episode, I was like, this woman is just like fearless and feral and her voice is so amazing. Like, yes, I want her. And thankfully she agreed. She is an extraordinary talent. She is extraordinary. And I think there is something in this film that people have not seen from her. I would say she's a very internal character in this. And there's a playfulness and a kind of erraticness. Well, we've seen erratic in Severance, but it's a very different character from Heliar. And I just, she's such a pleasure to work with and such a true talent that I hope people get to see this film and appreciate her performance in it. Yeah.
Yeah. And the sense, too, of someone who is trying desperately to make sense of the world
Mm.
and living a life that doesn't make sense to her is something that just came right into focus when you picked Red. It's just like these films are about not just the way we understand our own lives, but the way we understand other people's lives, like, and how to fold other experiences into our own. I mean, it's the same word again, right? But Kieslowski's films are compassion machines, and they're just there. They're empathy machines, the way that Ebert described film itself,
Yeah.
the best possible way to understand how people work and why people make the choices they make, even when they're not necessarily the right ones. But there is something, and there is the romantic relationship that runs through Darkest Miriam is treated with such delicacy and tenderness for a film that is otherwise fairly bleak in its worldview. I mean, you absolutely captured a specific section of Toronto, and the way that, I mean, I'm 4 blocks from there right now,
Oh, okay.
from Allen Gardens, and that is incredibly accurate to the way, a library works, the way an underfunded library works, the way a city that's not in the best financial position
Yeah.
functions. If anything, it's actually, I mean, now that there are encampments in Allen Gardens, it's actually even more economically depressed, like visibly economically depressed than it was when you shot it. But it is such a clear call for understanding and connection and compassion, no matter what the municipal situation. Like it's really
Yeah.
there are moments, it's funny, there are moments thinking about it now where it almost feels like you're watching pieces of Decalogue with the underdeveloped Polish locations that are surrounded by high rises, but currently not there yet. And
Mm.
that environment, where people are still cycling because it's the easiest way to get through traffic, and where homes are utilitarian rather than decorated, deliberately so. It just feels like and the nature of the romance anyway, like it feels like there's a connection between Eastern Europe and present day Canada that's being built over the course of the first 2 acts of the movie in a really
Mhm.
subtle way.
Yeah, I mean, it was really important. Obviously, this is a book by a Toronto author set in Toronto, set in Allen Gardens, and that was really important and central to the film. And so I'm so pleased we got to shoot in Allen Gardens. And there was an encampment there when we shot. When we scouted it, there wasn't, but when we shot, there was a smallish. I don't remember how many tents were there, but it's a park that has a real feel to it, a real vibe to it, and when we were shooting, it was interesting because it really felt like we were shooting in someone's living room because there are people who live there. I mean,
Yeah.
that's their home, and it felt like we were intruding in some ways. It's a very, our city is going through something, that's for sure, and it's very devastating. I teach at TMU, and uh, it's 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 quite a scene around there. It's post-apocalyptic, to be honest. Like you see people who desperately need help and are not getting help, and that's what libraries have become now. They are a true public space, and people who need support and help and have nowhere to go and nowhere to be go to libraries. And librarians' jobs now are social worker jobs
Yep.
for for a large part, if not entirely, to be honest, especially at, certain branches. So it's a film that speaks to all of that as well, and we really tried hard to present it in an honest way, and in a way that didn't characterize anyone as a caricature. We really tried to make things specific and detailed so that people understood that these are real people and their circumstances are true and real. Yeah.
Well, it's the perfect time for an audience to receive it, and now you have the star power to trick them into going and getting something
Yeah,
that's
hopefully.
actually good for them.
Yeah, yeah, unexpected. The success of Severance second season, but she deserves it. She's a true talent. So hopefully, a lot of people will get to see the film. Yeah.
My thanks to Naomi Jaye, whose new film Darkest Miriam is opening in Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, and Sudbury this Friday, March 28th, and expanding to more cities soon. Thanks also to Michelle Brickman. She knows what she did. You can find Naomi on Instagram at NaomiRJ, all one word, NaomiRjaye. And you can find Red in the Criterion Collection's exquisite box set of the Three Colors trilogy, which is available in 4K, Blu-ray, and DVD editions. The film is also streaming in the US on the Criterion Channel and Max, and available to rent or buy on American VOD services, but not in Canada. Not at all. So go get the box set. It's splendid. And go find M.H. Murray's episode on Blue in our archives. It's a good one. You can find me on Blue Sky at Norm Wilner, and you can find this podcast there at Semcast, S-E-M-Cast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. The first year of the show is still available for just $20 at payhip.com/Semcast. That's the first 52 episodes of Someone Else's Movie, 41 of which aren't currently available anywhere else. And check out my newsletter, Shiny Things, at shiny-things.ghost.io. I think you'll enjoy it. Our theme song's by The Last Year. If you like it, or the show in general, please say so. Leave a review wherever you've been listening. Every little bit helps. It truly does. And check out the other shows on the Frequency Podcast Network while you're doing that. Stay safe, watch movies, wear a mask if you go out, get the new booster as soon as you can. I'll see you next week.